I don't know, and I don't want to sound conservative, but we live in a society where individuals are the one making the dream come true. And I believe a lot in the family. In the family, like that unit. It's there where you actually decide what you're gonna do. And I believe, like the same way that we have a Puerto Rican in the justice, in the Supreme Court, we're gonna be having more Latinos in those positions. And if you want to have an idea of that, is go to any classroom in the city of New York, even in private universities, and you're gonna see how Latinos are actually being integrated into the educational system, which is basic crucial in order to advance in this society. And I don't know if I actually addressed your question.
Do you see a disconnect between the children and their parents? Like that the children are much more connected, like you said, to other children of other nationalities, but the parents maybe aren't, with those prejudices that you talked about, black and white and so forth?
But isn't that a constant immigrant story? Isn't that the immigrant story? I mean, if you go to Queens and go to a Korean neighborhood, the grandmothers are mad that the grandchildren don't speak Korean and want to marry other kids. There's nothing particularly Latino about.
No, I agree with that. My only point is that the technology and everything is changing so quickly. The children understand that. I think there's a gap there. That's my point.
I think the Pew did a study where they kind of painted a portrait of the millennials, right, and how different they were from people older than they were. But I think you have to look at different temporalities, because we mentioned Judge Sotomayor a couple of times. I'm finishing something about her confirmation process, and Sonia Sotomayor had to retract her Latino identity to be allowed to sit on that court. So we have different temporalities, different things going on that don't necessarily paint a uniform picture. So at just the same time that she said the price of the ticket is you have to take that white Latina thing back. On the other hand, you have Arizona going on. On the other hand, you have situations in classrooms where you're creating kind of a more fluid relationship between groups, and all those things are happening simultaneously. And they require different, I guess, tactics and strategies to cope and deal with them.
You should definitely read Hispanic New York. But I'm reading a book right now, which I recommend very much. I'm not done with it yet, but it's terrific so far. It's by a guy named Oscar Guardiola Rivera. What if Latin America ruled the world? How the South will pull the North into the 22nd century. It's a really terrific book, and I recommend it to you all. If I can take a moderator's prerogative. Our final question.
Hi, my name is Marlena Fitzpatrick. I'm clearly Irish. I have a question and a story for Milagros. I have the blessing to work for the Screen Actors Guild. I work with Latino actors, and one of the actors that we represent went to an audition, and he reads the script, and the script was supposed to, you're supposed to read this line that it is your skin color is a number. So you're either a 2 or a 4 or a 6 or an 8. So he threw the script out and, no, I'm not gonna do this. If you want me to do this, I'm gonna say who I am. So the casting director, don't call us, we'll call you. Next day he gets a call. So, and that's the episode of Friends that you see when Ross wants to get tan and the guy looks at him and says, I'm Puerto Rican. It was a big mess, and it's funny because that show was, filmed in LA and it depicted New York. It was very clear. Anyway, we're talking about the Latinization of New York, but I often go back to the Americanization of us, and we continue to talk about our labels and Hispanic and Latinos, And recently I read an essay by Benjamin Larire, Science. I want to write you're looking at me. I want to write an American poem where he's talking about, I'm a Chicano and I'm gonna write about who I am, and I write in Spanish. And oftentimes, because I do that, I look myself down because people are looking down on me. But the truth is, this is who I am. But he also talks about integration, and my question is, and I want to hear what Paul has to say, isn't integration the death of who we are and what our ancestors are? Now you know how I feel about voting for statehood, but we'll talk about that later.
Paul.
It's your turn.
Is it integration to death? I hope it's not integration to death. What I hope is that it will be, it already is and will be in a much greater degree in the future, a vast enriching of American United States culture by incorporating this new element, which is actually an old element. And the newer it is, the older it is, in response also to the person who asked about Native Americans and pre-Hispanic languages. There's an essay, Octavio Paz wrote an essay on this topic dealing with the question of food, a culinary question, pointing out that as certain kinds of foods spread, like the use, say, of tortillas, what is actually happening is that America, or the United States, and, or the entire Western Hemisphere returns to itself, because these are the most ancient of foods. So that there's a way in which the American culture is becoming more deeply itself than it used to be. But this itself that is becoming more deep, that is more deeply attaining, should be, used to be, and hopefully will be in the future, a self that has a Spanish or element in literature, a Latin American element, an element that is not just English, traces back to England, but is richer and wider than that. That is a glorious aspect, but the new aspect, which is larger, should be still more glorious. That's my response.
And with that, please thank our panelists. And there's a reception right outside, right?
There's a reception.
There's a reception right outside.